All right, let's get right into this. Imagine this scenario. You've got two teams, 5 men and 5 women, and they're dropped in the middle of nowhere. Their mission? Just survive. And the prize for doing it? A whopping $500,000. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about who could build the biggest fire. This turned into an absolute masterclass in strategy. Right out of the gate, the men's team saw this as a contest of pure physical strength. I mean, their confidence was through the roof. They were completely convinced that their strength was this unbeatable trump card. They could see the finish line, yeah, but they totally misjudged the kind of race they were in. And that right there is the key to this whole thing. This entire experiment, this entire game, it all hinged on one single game-changing rule. A rule that turned a simple survival test into this complex psychological game of chess just, played out in the middle of a forest. See, this one rule completely flips the script. It's not about being the last person standing anymore. It's about making sure someone from your team is the last one there. And all of a sudden, every single decision becomes a strategic move. How much food do you eat? Who should stay? Who should go? Do you stick it out or do you leave to save your team precious resources? So this one little rule, it sparked two totally different game plans right from day one. You had one team playing the long game, thinking about the end game, while the other was just focused on, making it through the day. Let's really dig into how these two philosophies went head to head. And you could see the difference right away. The women immediately started rationing their food. They planned for strategic eliminations as early as day 3 because they knew 5 people couldn't last on what they had. The men, on the other hand, they tore through their supplies, they built this pretty flimsy teepee, and they saw anyone leaving as a sign of weakness, not as a strategic play. I mean, the difference in their mindsets was just night and day. The women were all on the same page with this very clear, calculated goal: get the team the win. The men talked a big game about teamwork, but as soon as things got tough, the blaming started and these internal conflicts just began to eat away at their entire operation. Okay, so you've got these two totally different camps, right? And as the days tick by, the game throws in these little challenges. And it was in those moments that the consequences of their strategies, they really started to show. And it all happened so fast. On day 10, the women win an archery challenge and get more food. Then, just 3 days later, bam, the first men start quitting. Not as part of some grand strategy, but just because of the sheer hardship of it all. And this all leads up to this massive, pivotal moment on day 20. So here's the deal. A representative from each team is given this incredible choice. You can eliminate yourself right now, and your team gets a huge storm-proof tent. Or you can stay in the game, and your team gets nothing. This was the ultimate test. What's more valuable, a long-term asset or an extra person? And you know what? Their decisions perfectly mirrored their strategies all along. Julia, for the women, she doesn't even hesitate. She sacrifices herself to give her last remaining teammate, Phaedra, this absolutely critical tool for survival. TJ, for the men, he chooses to stay. He thought having 2 players left was better than 1 player with a good shelter. And that regret hit him almost instantly. TJ realized his mistake right then and there. He put bodies over assets, and he failed to see that a failing shelter in a storm could easily take out both of his remaining guys. It was just a catastrophic strategic error. So think about where this leaves them. Phaedra is now playing solo, sure, but she's secure, she's warm, she's dry. The 2 remaining men, they still have each other, but they are totally exposed to the elements, and their shelter and their morale is about to be seriously tested. So fast forward a bit. The harsh conditions and the lack of supplies, they do their thing, and pretty soon the men's team is down to just one last survivor, TJ. So now it's a true head-to-head battle, him versus Phaedra. And this is where the women's long-term strategy paid off in a massive, massive way. By day 50, the difference between them was just staggering. Because the women's team had been strategically eliminating members from the start, Phaedra was sitting on a mountain of food. I'm not kidding, she literally said she had more than she could eat. Meanwhile, TJ, whose team never rationed anything, was down to his last day of food. He was on the brink of starvation. And then came this brilliant little test. Both of them were given a multi-pack of chocolate bars. The catch: hidden inside one of the wrappers was a note for a 3-day food supply. And the first one to find it and get to the bridge wins the prize. And this is where strategy and circumstance just perfectly collide. Phaedra, with her food surplus, has no problem tearing into multiple bars, and she finds the note pretty quickly. But TJ, he's in full-on survival mode, rationing his chocolate one tiny square at a time. By the time he finally finds the note days later, the prize is long gone. His scarcity mindset cost him dearly. The very final challenge was all about negotiation. TJ, who has absolutely no food left, makes this desperate plea for a private chef. Phaedra, on the other hand, just asks for an art kit. The rule was, if one person says no, nobody gets anything. And with her massive resource advantage, Phaedra had zero incentive to agree. She calmly said no, sealing TJ's fate. And with that, it was all over. The physical and mental exhaustion, all of it, brought on by a failed strategy and a complete lack of resources, it was just too much. TJ tapped out. So why did the women's team win so decisively? It wasn't about strength. It wasn't about endurance. It wasn't even about survival skills in the way we usually think about them. It was about understanding the game they were actually playing. After 67 grueling days, Phaedra, the last woman standing, secured that $500,000 victory for her entire team. Her win was the direct result of a strategy that was set in motion all the way back on day one. So let's just recap that winning formula. First, they had a single, united goal from the very start. The team win, not the individual win. They made strategic sacrifices, understanding that fewer mouths to feed meant a much longer runway for their final player. They prioritized key assets, that tents, the food, over just having more bodies in the game. And it all came down to brilliant resource management that created a lead that was just impossible to overcome. And really, it leaves us with this one last thought. This whole experiment was a brilliant demonstration that in a long-term challenge, a well-designed system, a really strong strategy can outperform raw individual strength every single time. It was never about who was stronger, it was about who was smarter.